All right, today I'll be sharing my thoughts and experiences with you on why one should consider taking the American Board of Science in Nuclear Medicine, the ABSNM board exam, and how to prepare for it. You'll see that in my name, after my name, besides my PhD, here is a mention of the ABSNM, which stands for being a diplomat of the ABSNM. So something happens, presumably you're qualified to do certain things. And as I'll share with you, you might gain really valuable experiences by going through this experience. So before I talk about why and how, let's just talk about what exactly is the ABSNM. And then we'll get to why consider taking it and how to prepare for it. So there's a web page that you may want to go to, and you should be going to and finding out more information. In short, the ABSNM has been around for a while now, and it is sponsored by a number of organizations, including the ACNM, the ACNP, and the SNMMI. And its objective is to certify scientists practicing nuclear medicine. And this requires passing a two-part comprehensive exam that is administered by the board. Again, there's great people on the board and the governance of respectable people, some of whom in the past I have interacted with and provided me valuable feedback. I would have to add that the webpage itself is not the most informative webpage on earth. It certainly can be improved, and it has been cause of anxiety for myself in the past, I remember. And I think this is one reason why these discussions and sharing of experiences can be quite helpful. So why go through this? I myself found out about this by accident. I found out one of my colleagues was taking it. I was like, what is the ABSNM? And I found out about it. And having gone through it, it really enabled me to learn new things and to really consolidate my learning. So I was really, when I took this was in 2013. I was more of a pet person. I hadn't really done much or even knew much about the world of nuclear medicine besides the basic coursework that I had done, because that was not the topic of my research. But through this, I was forced to learn more, and I really feel a lot more confident having gone through this. And so for you to have this comprehensive learning, as I'll advise to you how exactly you may want to do to prepare for the board exam, it might prove valuable in itself, regardless of whether or not you even take the board exam or you pass it. And those are secondary, actually. So the learning itself is, the forced learning, if you want to call it, was very helpful for me. It certainly it can lead to new experiences, as you'll find out that for taking this exam, you may have certain requirements, including certain clinical practical experience, right? You may sort of start discussing with others, including your mentors, whether you can do more work in the clinic and learn more stuff. There's another cool experience I had personally, which I'll share with you later. Expanded opportunities, job opportunities, right? So I remember about 4 years ago in 2018, when I moved back from Hopkins to my home, Vancouver, at the University of British Columbia and the BC Cancer Agency, this was part of my negotiations. Like, the opening was for someone who was not doing only research, but someone who would contribute to the clinic and the clinical physics program. And so this sort of enhanced my qualifications, and it gave me the confidence, and also it was very important in that process. It also allowed me to do negotiations for my own salary. For example, I provided them, as I was negotiating my salary, what are the typical salaries for board certified versus non-board certified medical physicists, and that did make a difference. So it can result in, for example, I'm really more of a research person than a purely clinical physics person. And so I was able to have a position that sort of combined these two, right? And so it can open up new horizons for you. Importantly, this does not take, doing the ABSNM does not require you to have graduated from a medical physics degree. You could have graduated from physical natural sciences, engineering, others, applied math, etc. And even if you were in medical physics, your program does not have to have been CAMPEP accredited. So in my own example, when I graduated, got my PhD in 2005 from University of British Columbia, they did not have a CAMPEP program. It was just coming around. And so some other board certifications require you to have gone through CAMPEP, but I didn't have that. And so this has been valuable for me, and I know for many other people who were not CAMPEP accredited to go through this. On the webpage, you'll see that it says accredited. They don't mean CAMPEP accredited. They mean a university that's accredited, not CAMPEP accredited. And so that's just a general, typical statement to my understanding, but I'm confident that you don't need a CAMPEP accreditation to be able to take this. And this is why it adds value for a number of people. So there's 3 subspecialties that are offered when you take the board exam. Board exam, as I mentioned before, has 2 parts. One is the general exam, everybody takes that, and there's a special second part that is for each subspecialty. So radiation protection is one subspecialty, and it's recognized by the NRC. There's this one, which I'm quite more familiar with, and this is what I take, and I believe this is what most people take. It's a nuclear medicine physics and instrumentation, the NMPI. It is recognized by the NRC and other organizations like the ACR for signing off on physics surveys, and by the AAPM as certification to be a qualified medical physicist, which can be important and valuable for a number of positions. And finally, there's a molecular imaging track. And so this also is a path for board certification, and it's actually very valuable and primarily for foreign applicants who may not be able to meet the requirements to take this physics and instrumentation exam. But the standards are strictly followed, so the diplomats in that one sort of meet qualifications and they can serve as radiation safety officers. So it opens up new opportunities for a number of people. Okay, so if you decide to take this exam, then the question is how to exactly prepare for it and how do you do it? And again, I just want to add, this is not for everybody. If you're purely into research and you find it of extremely low possibility that you'll ever be involved in the clinic, maybe it's not for you. But frankly, my suggestion is that even if you go through that exercise of preparing for this board exam, you might be learning and consolidating learning in a very valuable way for yourself. So it's something to consider. How do you prepare? First of all, you got to know when and where is it. Well, the application deadline tends to be around early March, but to be able to apply for it, you need to be preparing in advance and providing documents and getting reference letters and things of the sort, as you can find out on the webpage. The exam date typically is right before the annual Society of Nuclear Medicine Molecular Imaging meeting in June, and it takes place where the conference is. So for example, in 2023, this will be happening in Chicago. That's where the conference is. So you'll be, if you take it in this year, in the 2023 year, you'll be taking it in Chicago right before the SNMMI meeting. So there are a number of requirements for certification before I go through how to actually mentally prepare for this and prepare scientifically for this. Some requirements, you need to, there's an application fee, around $900 or so, US dollars. You need to maintain your certificate. So annually you need to pay them, I think around $75 or so. And every 4 years, you need to provide them documentation that you've been having a certain number of continuing education, C or CME. So sort of you have to go through, as you go to conferences, you make sure you accumulate the hours that you need and so that you provide 4 years of certification for it. All foreign degrees and certifications must be evaluated for US equivalency by the World Education Services. They can sometimes be picky, so if you give yourself enough time. I remember I took a course when I was in high school in the college, and they came after me and said, well, what happened to that course? And so I had to go after that course and provide it to them, all kinds of things. So they're kind of very thorough, and they charge their own fees. So other requirements are, please go to the webpage and read the requirements. There's a general education requirement, which could be different for because you could take this having a master's degree or a PhD degree, and the numbers for these change, and the training or work experience number of years changes depending on your degree. For the physics and instrumentation subspecialty, you also need practical, so-called practical experience. So go through the document. Frankly, the information in the website I found over the years to be confusing. So you have to read it very carefully. There's and statements, there's or statements, sometimes at the end of a very, very long sentence. So make sure you notice if it's an or an and. They do have a frequently asked questions page too. It can be intimidating, but don't be intimidated. Just hang in there, just go with it. Try to find out the information, try to ask people around, and you'll get there. So I have to make a note that again, my experience is with the physics instrumentation subspecialty, though the molecular imaging one appears to be very related to that one. So I'm not entirely sure if it's this exact same exam. I'm trying to find out, and once I find out, and if I find out, I'll share at the bottom of this YouTube video in the comment section, and other kinds of information as I find out. You can pay something like $50 to get the so-called syllabus from the ABSNM webpage. I remember I did this, either I paid or somebody I knew gave it to me. And frankly, I didn't find it to be that useful. Just a big collection of topics, just a list of almost everything you need to know. You need to know everything, it appears. So it can be a source of anxiety, and frankly, it wasn't that helpful to me. To me, it wasn't helpful, which is why I started asking people around. So I'll share some of those with you. So I know they have a newer edition. I really don't know how useful this is going to be. And so, which is one reason I'm preparing this video. Again, if I find out that it is becoming more useful, I'll mention that in the comment section. So in this video, I'll be providing you with 4 key recommendations that I've, in my own experience, was very helpful, and I've given this to others, and they have tended to appreciate it, and hopefully you'll find it interesting too. And 2 other suggestions. So one of the key points is that for you to pass this board exam, you really need to deeply and thoroughly understand foundational, or you may want to call it conventional nuclear medicine. So again, when I was doing this, I was really more in the world of PET, and in the world of SPECT or planar imaging, technetium, these kind of things was not my area of research. So I didn't have that thorough understanding. And going through the exercises I'm about to mention to you actually allowed me to become much more confident. To this day, it continues to benefit me. So, and I've heard in the past couple of years that the board exam is moving in the right direction, that they are asking more updated questions, sort of trying to keep up with the field, but still be totally prepared that you're going to be getting questions that are very sort of foundational, or if you want to call it conventional world of things. So you really need to understand the past actually quite well, I would say, or even the present conventional. My number one advice is for you to reach out to ABSNM diplomats. Just reach out to them. There's a web page there's a page on their web page that is here, and it lists a number of names, right? And these names are presumably updated every year. So that's what I did. I found out that I knew a couple of people here, and especially one of them was very helpful, provided key insights to me, which I practice and I'll be sharing with you. And over the years, these are some of the things that I recommend to others as well. So go in there, see if you know anybody, you could ask them questions, especially if they have taken this exam in the later years, they might give you even more insights. So that's number one key recommendation. Number two key recommendation is for you to read the Chandra textbook that I'm showing you here, cover to cover. Now, this is a previous edition. This is the edition that I read years ago. I was advised to read it, and I did, and I'm so glad I did. I read it cover to cover. I remember it took me almost a month, and I was just fully dedicated to this book, reading it cover to cover. At the end of every chapter, there's a question and answer. You go through the exercises, solve them yourself, do the questions yourself, then look at the answers at the back. Don't look at the answers before you do them. Try them, go at them. And sometimes they really take you to places that you may not have been. So hang in there and just do the exercises. Now, in an interesting turn of events, I was invited to actually co-author the next edition of this book, which is here. This is the current edition. And it was kind of interesting, actually. As I was going through this book, I found it's a great book. I found a number of mistakes in the Q&A, little mistake, most of them. So I started reaching out to Dr. Chandra, and he was very gracious. We went back and forth, and it led to a good friendship, and he was gracious. And in the future, he actually asked me in the next edition, he asked me to co-author the book with him, because we were also, you know, he felt that the book really has to be expanded. We added chapters, especially on tomography, given the current, you know, progress in the field. So it's a new updated book. It still has, you know, as with any book, you know, once you publish, you may find a few mistakes here and there. So we're, you know, in this link, you can see a few mistakes in, I think, chapter 1, 2, and 8, I believe, that we found in the Q&A. But overall, it's fair to say that this book is recommended to prepare. Now, I would say read it cover to cover. It's a narrower book, right, than other key textbooks. Like the book by Dr. Simon Cherry is a fantastic book. It's a thick book. This book is a thin book, 200-something pages. You can do this cover to cover in a month or more. Make sure you do the Q&As. I already said that. Pay special attention to chapter 5. I found chapter 5 to be one of the most interesting chapters in this book. It's actually the only chapter that's not even physics. It's about radiopharmaceuticals, and it shed so much light on what was going out there. You may not be able to memorize everything, and you should not memorize everything, but it gives you key insights. So this was very useful for me. We continue to update it. You know, of course, the field of theranostics continues to evolve. So you got to be up to date with some of the theranostic stuff that's happening, that may have happened after this book, this edition, which came out in 2018, was published. On the exam, I would say for some questions, you will not know the answer, but having gone through such a chapter, chapter 5 of this book, will increase your chance of narrowing it down to the right answer, especially if you couple it with the books that I mentioned next. Okay, and let's talk about that. So my number 3 key recommendation is to check out, not necessarily read the entirety, but just check out the book by Mettler and Erratum. Okay, so in this book, this is a textbook of essentials of nuclear medicine, not physics, but nuclear medicine, right? My experience, I worked on the previous edition, 6th edition, reading, preparing for my exam, was just going through, looking at the chapters, even just going through, turning the pages, looking at some key figures, and especially the tables at the end was helpful for me, gave me more confidence to take that general first part of the board exam, which is more about general knowledge. And you do have to understand some of the essentials of nuclear medicine. So that's number 3. And number 4 recommendation is to actually attempt this book. So this is a book for those nuclear medicine board review, those who want to take the board exam, not the physicists, but the physicians, right? Not the engineers, not the physicists, but the physicians, right? Preparing for their board review. So once you pick up this book, and I read the previous edition, but now there's a later 4th edition, you will not know most of this stuff, and that's okay. But just going through the exercises, right, is very good. Just going through the multiple choices in the first few chapters, I found to be useful. I'm confident that having done that allowed me to solve at least a couple of questions more carefully and more accurately. So at the end of the board exam, I'm so happy that I listened to my friend who had taken this board exam and who had recommended this book to me. I knew at the end of the board exam that I've passed it. And I think it was like 6 hours of exams, 2 times 3 hours, something like that. I forget, 2 times 2.5 maybe, or 2 times 3 hours. It was, of course, difficult to sit through an exam for 5-6 hours. You know, they split it into 2 parts, take a break, all that stuff. But it was a fulfilling feeling, and I knew that I'm going to pass it. And I think going through this book and the previous book really gave me the confidence to do that. So those are my 4 key recommendations, but I want to make 2 additional suggestions. On our YouTube channel, we have a series of lectures on nuclear medicine physics. You may want to check them out. There's particularly a playlist of a physics lecture series for a course that we were delivering, 49 lectures. You may want to look at some of them. I mean, here you see about 12 of them, but there's 49 of them. You'll see it in the playlist, so you may want to check that out. And I'll write this down at the bottom of this YouTube video. There's also a condensed, super condensed version of that where, all of these, we sort of provide a super condensed summary here, 4 hours and a half of content. So you may want to check these out, or, pick and choose and see what are the areas that you think you might have to learn more about. And finally, I would say there are some interesting resources. You might want to play with these. There's a number of apps that you could put on your cell phone. Like this one, I actually highly recommend the one by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. This is actually a pretty cool app. There's other ones too. And then there's this one by the BNL, where they have the nuclear data database, where you sort of go through this kind of an exercise, and there's so many different things you could play with. Look at the nuclear structure and decay of the data interactively, get better feel of different isotopes, etc. So if you take this exam, please share experiences with us. We'd love to hear about what you felt worked for you, what didn't work for you. And I just want to wish all of you good luck in your endeavors. And thank you, and keep in touch.